Nobody likes to admit it, but deep down, every single one of us has used our motorcycle to say three words to the world: I'm better. We race people who aren't even racing us. We drag knees through hairpins we barely know, flexing bigger bikes, higher horsepower, and high-end gear, while pretending it's just about the passion. Intellectually, we know that leaning a bike 50 degrees into a blind turn proves absolutely nothing. But emotionally, that "yes, I can do this" feeling is pure magic. Maybe it's because that feeling is addictive. You take a corner faster than before. You lean the bike a little further. You do something you weren't sure you could do. And somewhere in your head, you hear, "Yes, I can do that." That feeling matters because for a moment, you are not just riding a motorcycle. You are confirming something about yourself. Maybe you were not as scared as you thought. Maybe you are more capable than you thought. You can control this machine, and maybe, just a little bit, you feel like you are better than the guy next to you. And if someone happens to be watching, you might try a little harder. Think about those motorcycle channels where someone sits next to a corner and film riders going through. Do people watch because the photographer takes beautiful pictures? Not really. People watch because they want to see what happens when riders hit that corner. How fast will they go? How far will he lane? Can he make it? It's almost like every rider is stepping on a little stage, trying to perform his own version of river dance. And sometimes the performance doesn't quite go according to plan. Some people watch to understand what went wrong. Some want to see how difficult the corner is. But either way, there's something interesting about watching other riders try to prove what he can do. And those channels can keep uploading, which tells you something. When someone is watching, we don't always ride the same way we would if nobody was there. The corner becomes a stage, and suddenly we are not just trying to get through it, we are trying to perform. I know this because I've done it, and I've seen it happen to people around me. I've been riding in China for decades. When I started riding, we didn't have anywhere near the number of motorcycles we have today. We didn't have all the riding gear. We didn't have endless choice of motorcycles. But none of that stopped us from trying to prove ourselves. If you didn't have a great motorcycle, you had speed. If you didn't have expensive gear, you had your riding skills. If there was nothing else to prove with, you could always prove what you could do. And that's why I don't think this is really a Chinese thing. I don't think it's an American thing or a European thing. It's just human. Motorcycles simply make it very easy to see. Because if you think about it, what are we actually trying to prove? That we are faster? Maybe. That we are skilled? Sure. That we are brave? Probably. But underneath all of that, there may be something much simpler. We want to feel capable. We want to know, I can do this. Because when you have more than 200 kilos of metal underneath you and you make it do exactly what you want, there's a very satisfying feeling that comes with it. I can control this thing. And somewhere in the back of your mind, maybe I'm better than the guy next to me. But here's what I find interesting. Getting older doesn't kill that desire to prove yourself. It just changes who you are trying to prove it to. When I was young, I was almost always trying to prove I can do it. How fast could I go? How far could I lean? What could I do with this bike? I didn't think much about whether I should. I want to know whether I could. But after riding for all these years, something changed. Now, when I'm coming into a corner, sometimes other thoughts appear. Is this really worth it? It's almost like you were riding a horse at full speed and suddenly you pull on that reins. How hard you pull probably depends on what you've experienced in life. I've seen enough accidents to know what can happen when things go wrong. So these days, I probably pull those reins a little harder. I'm not going into a corner trying to prove how far I can lean anymore. I have no interest in doing my own version of river dance in the middle of a corner. But here's the funny part. I'm still an old dude who sometimes wants to prove something. When I'm riding on a long trip, I still get the feeling, look, I can still do this. I'm not old yet. Yes, I still want to prove myself. But now, most of the time, I'm not proving it to another rider. I'm proving it to myself. Sometimes I'm not competing with the guy next to me. I'm competing with the person I used to be. For me, the change is pretty simple. I still like speed. I still enjoy pushing the bike sometimes. I just don't feel the need to prove myself every time I ride to other people or even to myself. Because at some point, the question changes. When you were young, can I do it? Later, is it worth doing? And sometimes that's enough for an answer. So here's something you can think about the next time you're riding. Imagine nobody is watching, no other riders, no friends, no camera. Nobody knows what motorcycle you ride. Nobody knows how fast you went. Nobody will ever know how well you took that corner. Would you still ride exactly the same way? Maybe you would. Maybe you wouldn't. I don't know. But I know my answer has changed. I still want to prove that I can. I just don't feel the need to prove it every time. And if you still do sometimes, well, I get it. I'm still doing it too. And if you really want to watch Riverdance, just buy a ticket. You'll get a better show, and Riverdance gets another customer. You're welcome, Riverdance.